Today's conversation is going to be surrounded around layer twos. I'm sure many of you have heard about airdrop farming, the good old farmers, the ARB receivers, and yeah, we're just going to start diving deep into some of the most biggest layer twos that are everyone's talking about right now. We have Linea, Sui, zkSync, Starknet. Each one of them has their own individual objective and thing that they are working on. They have bigger communities, whether they're focused in gaming, wallets, all sorts of dApps really. But today I'm joined by our good old Naruto. He's going to be diving into some of these cooks, how to get involved, how to stay ahead, and just kind of get a good view of the landscape ahead. I know it becomes a little bit confusing as each day it feels like a new layer 2 is coming up, or how to keep track with all these dApps, making sure that your wallets are all together. You're making sure that you're getting your time in for each one. But yeah, we're going to get started on all these things today. And yeah, I'll give it off to you, Naruto, to give us a brief overview about all these layer 2s.
Hey guys, welcome. Thanks for joining us. So today I'm going to talk about a few layer 2s that are on my timeline. I've seen people talking about in other Discords, just general stuff that we should maybe keep an eye on so we can airdrop farm it and utilize your time resource best as possible. So we have Linea, which is made by MetaMask, the people who created MetaMask. It is a zkSync, it is a zk rollup similar to zkSync and a few of the ones we're going to talk about today. They raised $726 million. They are currently in the testnet. There is still a lot of time to get into this project. There's still a lot of time probably before mainnet launches. So we'll get into that. zkSync, as you guys know, they raised $458 million. As of right now, the mainnet launched about a month ago, right after Arbitrum. There's tons of things to do there. We have Starknet, which raised $282 million. As you guys know, I feel like I'm a Starknet fudder. With that being said, though, I do think that as of right now, it's an alpha. As we get into beta and eventually to their final product, their final mainnets, I do think it will get a lot better. I've seen a lot of people talking about it, and there's a lot of opportunity there as well. Layer 0 is a protocol that is attempting to connect all the blockchains together. The main thing is they allow blockchains to send messages between one another to make fast transactions across the blockchains. And lastly, Sui, SUI. Sui launched its token recently on KuCoin, OKGet, and a few one other websites. So that's not a farming opportunity, but I do think that their mainnet's coming out in about 2 weeks. So I do think that there are a lot of opportunities for new protocols and projects launching on Sui, similar to all the opportunities there were on zkSync when it first came out.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, there's just a lot of opportunity, and each one of them, I feel like they are at a different point. So you shouldn't always feel like you're behind or too far away from, being a part of what is going on right now. People are getting interacted every day, right? Whether you're, transacting on a wallet or a new game that's coming up. It's really early on, so I'm sure Naruto can share a little bit of insight onto how these dApps kind of work, or a little bit of his FUD for Starknet. But yeah, we'll start right into it. Do you think that most of these layer 2s are nearing their culmination, or are we at a point where we can still get on for the opportunities that we have within these layer 2s? Right? Are we at a point where your opportunity is better off on the dApps that are coming off onto these platforms, or it might be the different case for other ones?
So I think the only one that you cannot farm anymore is Sui, simply because they launched their token. everybody was hoping they were going to do an airdrop. They did not do an airdrop. They instead did an IDO type sale, was selling the tokens to the general public that had joined the Discord before certain dates. That is the only one that you are for sure too late for. But like I said, I do think that there are a lot of opportunities coming to SWI with all these new projects that will be launching on that network. For the other ones, I think there's a lot of time for most of these. zkSync, we're a year out. Starknet, we're probably 5, 6, 7 months out from a token or until they fully launch their final product. ConsenSys, they just launched their test nets maybe 3 weeks ago. We are very, very early in that. I'm not entirely sure whether testnet activities will be considered for an airdrop later on, but I do think that if you have time, maybe once a month, maybe twice a month to do activities on there. Let's see, layer 0. It's a very large protocol. There aren't that many things to do on there right now. There are maybe like 2 or 3 tasks. Once again, I think we're maybe a year out before they launch their final end product or launch their beta, so they get closer to the final product. So I think for most of these, we still have a lot of time, except for SWI, but that's a different opportunity that we're going to talk about there.
Yeah, amazing insight there. So let's actually jump into SWI, right? Since it has finished. What are some of the things that you saw other people do or you understood that worked with SWI, right? So you can start preparing for, Starknet or layer 0, even ConsenSys, right? ConsenSys might be a little too early, but it's not early enough where you can't get involved, right? You can start keeping an eye and a beat on what is coming up and how you can stay tapped into those ones.
Yes. So so for SWI, the only requirement there was to have joined the Discord before certain dates in order to qualify for the token allocate for the token drop, and then you are entered into a raffle with a lot of other people. I think that I keep mentioning that because as we saw after Arbitrum, we saw when zkSync launched, there were tons of projects that popped up on zkSync. All these projects had tokens with sub-million market caps, and within a few days of that, after mainnet launching, they were $5, 6, 7, $8 million and easy. I called out 3 tokens I personally did not invest that much money in, but a few other people in here made 8 to 12x off the tokens I called out, simply because as new chains and protocols on these launch, people will flock to whatever new. So if a new DEX comes out, they're going to flock to it. A lot of these DEXs have IDOs. So there aren't going to be that many applicate and dApps on SWI. So the first ones that do come out, I think they're positioned for an easy. No, not financial advice. They're positioned possibly for a 5 to 10x on some of these tokens that will be coming out in the first few weeks. Are they long-term holds? Probably not. But I do think if you're doing some research and finding these new products that are launching on SWI, same for all these other ones when they come out, but SWI just has to come out right now. You'll be positioned for some good gains from these tokens.
Interesting, right? So right now, at the point that SWI has now finished their token allocation, right now you're looking at it from a perspective of IDO for new apps or projects that are coming onto SWI, right? Is that correct?
Yes, I will. Like I said, I think SWI mainnet launch in approximately 2 weeks. I will be doing a lot of research in the next week or two on projects that are launching on SWI and figuring out how I can position myself to get into either token launches or betas for projects. Or I would like to get on the ground. I would like to get on the ground floor for a lot of these projects.
Got it. And for IDOs, is there any sites that you recommend to find these sorts of projects? Is there a launchpad that we should be? Twitter and TweetDeck. I love it. What better research can you get than Twitter, right?
I'm a simple guy. I'm not. I'm a simple guy. Maybe sometimes a little overly simple, For zkSync, I found three things. I did not invest heavily enough in myself. That I kick myself in the butt for now. But just a simple spend 30-40 minutes a day, tweet deck with zkSync, and then just finagling the exclusions. So I'm not seeing a million scam things every single day. Check out the Discord, check out the white paper or the documents they have, see what they have planned, see how the community is doing in there, just like any other project. But for me personally, tweet deck and just grinding out 40 minutes a day, trying to at the very least 40 minutes a day, trying to find stuff on these new platforms.
Right. And when you say a tweet deck, you're obviously referring to special keywords that you're searching for in these specific criteria. So what are some of the kind of dApps that you're looking for when you're looking at SWI?
I'm going to be looking at dexes a lot. I think the main thing I'm going to be looking at is dexes. Everybody needs to trade tokens somewhere. Dexes, possibly perps, like maybe like a GMX version on SWI or something like that. It's a little bit hard when things first come out. Let's say, for example, zkSync. zkSync is still relatively new, so it doesn't have all of the functionality as, let's say, Ethereum has. Ethereum, you have oracles, which can tell your dApps a million different prices for tokens and things like that. So projects launching on new networks, similar to SWI and zk, they need to wait around a little bit for developers to build stuff. With that being said, you can still join these communities early and either be positioned for a better price in the IDO, or just having a better overview on what's going on in all these new products that are launching.
Got it. So are there any specific projects that you've been eyeing out through SWI?
There has not been. So as of right now, I'm talking. Let's talk. There has not been, simply because me and a few other MVHQ members are working on something together. So we've been pretty preoccupied with that. With that being said, in a week or two, I think I should have a lot more time. I should have a little bit more time to be searching on Twitter for at least 30-40 minutes a day.
Got it. So yeah, as you can see, these cooks kind of evolve as you spend some time with them. The narrative kind of changes from how you can get your token allocation to, what kind of products and or projects are being developed on these platforms. And as you mentioned, like your shift after airdrop would be more so focused on IDOs and token allocations that could, potentially pump NFA, as always. So what is it that you are researching / outlining on a daily basis for some of these earlier platforms? Like you mentioned, Starknet is still a little rough around the edges. So how do you interact with some of these wallets? Like what is the daily thing that you're doing in these 30 to 40 minutes?
So as far as like the research goes, right after Arbitrum came out, I think Twitter just designated me as an airdrop farmer myself. So my timeline is literally just filled with tons and tons and tons of threads for literally every single person and their mother trying to become a Twitter influencer by creating threads on airdrop farming.
I love that. I love that you called that out, because everyone is like, okay, you got to bookmark that shit, and most of it is like the same information, right?
Most of it's the same information. Some of it's even just wrong. They had a one person in particular, I forgot their name. They had a few different threads on some zkSync projects that I'm pretty familiar with. All those projects that they were talking about airdrop for, they already have tokens, and there's no plan for a future airdrop. So I commented there's already a token. The token's been on for 2 years. They're not doing another airdrop. And they're like, yeah, but this is still good it's still good to farm zkSync. Yeah, we'll just say that then. Just say, hey, here are some dApps on zkSync that you can use. That here's some dApps on zkSync that you can use to position yourself for airdrop when the token comes eventually. Don't make these people waste all this money on fees for stuff that's not going to help them. But see, so I think I'm not sure. Lucky's the word, but I can just go on my Twitter I can just go on my Twitter timeline and just see literally lots of threads, and try to distinguish what is good from what's not good. The way I do that, I would think, you can check out the Discord. You can check out these Discords. Once again, same thing with every other project out there. Check out the Discord, see what the roadmap is. See if there's a team, if the team's doxed. Check out how they compare against other competitors out there. If they've been around for a little bit, have they delivered on the roadmap that they promised already? If they've been out for a few months and they said we're going to do this, but this, and this by X dates, and they haven't, that's probably not a good sign for the future. So like I said, I think I'm not lucky. The word lucky's not the word, but it's my Twitter just happens to be filled with stuff. So I've just been going through that, liking the tweets, coming back to it at a later time to go through it. I think is my research, along with, like I said, TweetDeck. I was doing it for zkSync. I'm a little busy right now with the project, but aside from that, when it comes time for SWE, I would definitely get back into doing at least 30-40 minutes a day. Trying to
and something I'll add to that as well, right, is if you don't want to alter your personal feed, you don't have to, right? You can just build a burner Twitter account and you strictly use that account for searching purposes, right? If your idea is to, or like if your goal is to find whitelist projects, you can tailor your feed to show you what you need. If you are looking for dApps and projects within these layer twos, you can do the same thing, right? The way that you use your feed and you interact with tweets, it'll start recommending you stuff for those specific kinds of media and content that people are pushing out. I think that a great thing about all these people trying to create threads on Twitter about these layer twos and like how you could get started early is just eyes. Like it gives you a good sense that people are taking action with these layer twos, but not, as you mentioned, some of them might be wrong. So I would look at it more so as people are interacting with these layer twos and trying to get started, as opposed to just taking their word for fact. Definitely just do your own research and just fact check all the stuff that they are bringing up. Make sure to look up whatever layer two you're reading on's white paper, and you get a basic understanding of like what it is that they're trying to come up with and what you should look out for from them specifically. Like I remember SWE a couple months ago, I started looking into it, and they're optimized for great gaming, right? Like they could have very fast transactions that just seem seamless, right? So I immediately thought like, wow, this would be a great use case for Web3 games. Like it feels like you're not even doing a transaction on the blockchain because of how fast it is. And so when you start thinking about use cases that some of these layer twos could be used for, then you get into the sense of like, okay, maybe these kinds of projects might excel out of Starknet, out of ConsenSys, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as of right now, NFTs are kind of dead, aside from meme land, apparently. NFTs are kind of dead. The meme coins, it's never really been my thing. Crypto, I've never been really been a good trader. So I've just kind of pivoted to mostly doing this. But I mean, whether it be for zkSync or SWE or any of these things, maybe just I would recommend maybe once, twice a month. If you're going to airdrop farm something, airdrop farm once, twice a month. What I saw was with zkSync in this group, at least, is the hardest thing is just getting bridged over to a different network. Once you get bridged over, everything becomes a lot easier. It's kind of like going to the gym. Once you went to there, the gym's probably easy. It's just actually getting your butt out of bed and going there. It's the idea of most people have no problem doing it once they actually bridge to it. It's just the bridge, and the bridges are relatively easy for zkSync. Actually, just zkSync is easy. Actually, Starknet's a little bit more challenging, but um, I think the main thing is just getting started at all. Once you get started, it becomes a lot easier for all these things. But as far as other airdrops, I dropped a link to this Discord. Maybe it's a decent amount of people probably in this Discord. It's called Earn Drop Alpha. Uh, they have lots of sections for different airdrops, whether it be ZK, whether it be Starknets, whether I think they had a sweet one at one point. Uh, it's a good place to see what people are talking about if you're interested in airdrops. I will say, be careful, not be careful, take with a grain of salt what people are saying simply because I've seen a lot of psyops in there. So I'm not sure I'm pronouncing the word right. But people try to like psych you out and make you think like, don't do this because if you don't, in their mind, if they don't do this airdrop, that's more tokens from me. But generally speaking, you can see what other people are talking about in the airdrop community. I'm sure there are more than just this place. This just happens to be one of the larger discords that you can kind of scope out what's coming up in the farming world.
Yeah, so I'd imagine that's the same people in project discords flooding the absolute hell out of it, so they can buy in for cheap, right?
Literally, that's like right before everything was right before ZK came out. A whole bunch of people were like fudding a whole bunch of stuff about ZK and some dApps that were on ZK. But you can tell, at least I perceived it as they were doing it because they wanted less people to be doing it, so they had less competition. Kind of similar to Blur. Don't farm Blur. It's worth it. Waste your time. But yes, they have 1,000,000 points. The more people doing it, the less tokens are there to go around.
Yeah, I mean, messed up by any means, but if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. Yeah, again, that just goes back to, be mindful of what you see. Sometimes they have an ulterior motive behind it. Yeah, but can you tell me a little bit about Layer Zero and some of the things that we could look onto there, as well as ConsenSys? I want to talk a little bit about ConsenSys. I know that you mentioned um, they are founded, right, by some of the people at MetaMask, right?
No, it's founded by MetaMask company itself.
Okay, yeah, so even bigger.
Yeah, even bigger. I think their total valuation was $9 or $10 billion for Linea. But as far as Layer Zero, so Layer Zero is still relatively new one as well. It hopes to be a way that blockchains can talk to one another. It helps to pass messages between blockchains, which allow for faster interactions between the blockchains. So kind of like bridging, but just more like bridging information between the blockchains. The white paper is I tried to look at the white paper. It's very technical. It's a little bit over my head. But like I said, this is what I've been seeing people talk a lot about. I've seen Layer Zero maybe 3 or 4, 5, 6 times a day, compared to say some other ones which are like 1 or 2 times a day. A lot of people talk about Layer Zero. I think there's only one way you can interact with it right now. I can drop links for the websites, but there aren't that many ways to interact with it right now. There aren't that many dApps that are using it. So you're still very early, maybe a little too early, just like Linea. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on. As far as Linea goes, it is a ZK rollup as well. Like I said, they're founded by MetaMask. I think it'll be interesting to see over time how all of these ZK rollups play out. There's Polygon is making their own. MetaMask is making Linea. zkSync is making ZK. And Scroll is a ZK as well. All of these are intending to be cheaper than Arbitrum, which is already very cheap, and faster than Arbitrum, which is already very fast. For people who have used zkSync as of right now, you're maybe thinking, well, I've used zkSync, it's kind of really shitty gas. Or it's more expensive than Arbitrum. Well, yes, it is. So all these things have this all these things have this weird function where there is a set gas cost associated with each block. So whether there be 1 people or 1 million people, there's a set base fee. So the more people that use zkSync and all the other ones, the cheaper the transactions get, which sounds kind of counterintuitive to, let's say, Ethereum. So while zkSync is a little bit higher right now than Arbitrum, let's say we add another couple 10,000, 100,000 people, it would be significantly cheaper and than Arbitrum, and it should be even faster as well as more people start using it.
Just a little feedback on what's it called? Layer 0. It kind of reminded me of Polkadot, similar to how they build any app or service that you build on Polkadot can, interact with different blockchains. So its main focus is just like interoperability. Am I right? Right?
Yes,
is that along the lines?
Yep, interoperability. That's exactly what it is. Interoperability, but its main thing is passing messages across blockchains. Those messages, in theory, should be stuff like Oracle data, and other types of things like that, financial stuff.
Interesting. Yeah. So I think in the long run, it could definitely develop into something bigger as more developers start to create apps on it. So definitely would keep an eye on that one. I also saw that Scottco, the GOAT, dropped some TVL alpha, and he also mentioned that zkSync token is about 9 to 12 months out. Scottco, if you're listening, be sure to drop that website down so people could check it out. But you also mentioned the word zk rollups quite a bit. Could you explain to us what that means and what that implies for these layer 2s?
So zk rollups means that instead of sending one transaction in like a block like on Ethereum, they get a whole bunch of transactions on zk. They roll it up into one big transaction, and then they complete that transaction off chain on Ethereum. So in theory, instead of people having, I think, I'm not sure how many transactions are on Ethereum, but it's not that many transactions per block. So instead of having that little transactions per block, you can have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of transactions in one single block on zk, and that gets finished on Ethereum eventually. But on zk, it's very fast, and then they worry about it on the back end for all these transactions. So that's why the transactions are so cheap, because instead of having, let's say, maybe like 20, 30, 40 transactions per block, you can have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and the cost is about the same for those hundreds versus 30, 40, 50 on Ethereum. So the costs are a lot cheaper.
Got it. So the main objective is operation costs, and for user onboarding, right?
Yes, exactly that. Also, so for zkSync, this site was very good. DeFi Llama. This site was very good for me finding new projects. DeFi Llama has under the DeFi tab, they have a button for airdrops. You can see protocols that have launched, but they don't have a token yet. So you can check all those out, and you can see things that protocols that might possibly have an airdrop in the future. You can determine for yourself or see what other people are saying as well. You can also check out the TVL for all the different chains, such as zkSync. I'm assuming when Sui launches, Sui will be on here as well. So this is a great way to see how dexes are comparing against each other. One of the most important things right now on zk is what is the total value locked for the dex? How much money are people locking up in this dex? That's a great way to see up and coming new dexes. A great way to see the dexes that are doing really bad. People are taking their money out. So I think this cycle will also be very imperative, very very important when Sui comes out. If Sui is supported on DeFi Llama, in my research of new dexes that I should be on the lookout for.
Wonderful. And another thing that I wanted to get into as well is I remember somebody mentioning Arbitrum blacklisting wallets and kind of limiting from the airdrops, really just killing all the work that you've done over all this time. I know that most of this is really just us figuring stuff out, for lack of a better term, because there's no really guidelines on how they're operating these changes or how they are kind of flagging your transactional data. So what are some of the things or some of the ways that you think you can get around that?
Yeah, so Arbitrum actually worked with Hop. They are a bridge protocol, and maybe exchange too, to formulate a plan for how to identify people who were solely on Arbitrum for farming. Whether that be you dispersed from one wallet to 100 wallets, and you only did transactions, like maybe a few transactions, just to farm the airdrop. They figured out a methodology for Arbitrum to try to identify those people as something called a Cybele, and then blacklist them. So as of right now, the general consensus, if you wanted to farm these different airdrops, is to only fund wallets from a central exchange and to not have the wallets interact with each other. Another thing that you can do possibly is to use proxies on each individual wallet, so that the websites don't know that you're the same person doing all these interactions on different wallets. The third and last one that's a little more extreme, but you can do as well. There are Chrome extensions out there which can like hide your identity by removing all. They can hide your identity from these websites a little more efficiently by removing like the data from your computer, the data that the website sees about your computer. All these websites, they see a lot of information about your computer that they can kind of reasonably assume makes they can reasonably assume that you're the same person across all your different accounts. So like I said, the last one, there's a Chrome extensions that you can download that can get rid of all the data that the website sees. But that's a little more extreme. I think just a reasonable thing to fund your wallets from different central exchanges and don't interact with between wallets is a reasonably good start. And if you want to be a little more cautious, you could probably use proxies on the different wallets that you're connecting to the websites.
Now, I have another question with how you manage all these wallets and bankroll. Is this something that, I mean, obviously, the way that you want to airdrop or the way that you want to farm this airdrop or interact with all these layer twos depends on your bankroll. Is that something that you're taking into account before you go into these apps that you are interacting with daily? Like, do you set apart, okay, I'm going to interact with 3 dApps with X percentage from my current bankroll? Or you just kind of like interact with them on, like, let's say 3 accounts that you just split up the funds that you want to trade on?
So on my main wallet, I am just interacting. So I'm using a decent bit of money, maybe let's say between 0.5 and 1.5, depending on how good I'm feeling that day, to do bridging, swaps, stuff like that. On my other wallets, I send over 0.0, 0.06, 0.07, 0.08, and I just leave that money on that wallet until it runs dry. None of them have run dry yet. It's going to take a while before they do run dry. But I definitely, so I think my tax account is going to hate me next year with all these transactions that I'm doing. But there's Seth has a very good spreadsheet that you can use. It's a Google Doc that if you check out the zkSync, or I think it's pinned as well. You can calculate your transaction fees for each individual transaction, which would help you, one, figure out how much money you're using, two, help you to come tax time, three, keep you up to date on how much volume you've done across each on the chain. Some of these, not some, all of the airdrops so far, Arbitrum and Optimism, they have given you different levels, the different amounts of tokens based on how much volume you've done on the protocol. So say Arbitrum had one where you did $10,000 in volume, I think like 50 and like $250,000. You can A spreadsheet's a good idea simply because you can tell how much volume you've done, so you're not kind of guesstimating. Well, I think I've done 49, or I think I've done 50, but it comes time you haven't, and you get like the lower tier of token allocations. So I think the spreadsheets are an immensely helpful way to track how much you're spending and your volume you've done, and tax time come next year.
Yeah, I just went ahead and dropped the message link for that specific forum within the zkSync forum discussion. It does say that you need to request. So if you guys do want to request a forum, I would just ping.
Just ping Seth.
And just ping Seth, and I'm sure he'll be able to help you rather quickly.
We have two questions actually. One from BTC. How likely do you think the rumor of zkSync token dropping Q2 2023? I'm not seeing it. I'm thinking like later on in the year, maybe. I'm thinking like late Q3, early Q4. I haven't seen any other rumors that would signify them dropping it earlier. Their kind of mainnet, quote unquote, just launched a month ago. So I definitely think they need more time to actually build out the infrastructure for the dApps coming on the platform, and to make sure there are no bugs before they launch this thing. And they have some undiscovered bug, and billions of dollars get lost. The second question was from Tavera. So there's currently a game on zkSync. It is called Tavera. It was on testnet, and now they launched it on mainnet about 3 or 4 days ago. If anyone has an iPhone or has ever played the mobile game called Fun Run, I think it's very, very similar to Fun Run. Scott was wondering if Tavera's game might have the same potential for farming transactions similar to Bridge World on Arbitrum. No, it does not, simply because you are not doing transactions on zkSync. You do two transactions. You mint your name and you mint an NFT for the game. They're both free, but once you do that, there are no more transactions on chain that you're doing. So it's not a very good way for farming transactions.
Yeah, and as we dive into questions, just really want to open up the floor for discussion. If anybody has questions and would rather just jump in through voice, feel free to do so. Just unmute yourself and ask away. Yeah, I think we're covering a lot of great topics here.
If there is a game that you find on one of these networks, whether it be on hopefully on mainnet, but even testnet, games are a phenomenal way to get transactions on a network. Bridge World, I think, was how most of us in here got our transactions on Arbitrum. If there was no Bridge World, a lot of us wouldn't have made any money on Arbitrum at all, just because there wasn't that much to do. But I think as time comes along, like you mentioned, Sui is already done, so it's not really a problem. Starknet. I've seen a few games mentioned on Starknet. I can get a list of people, but if the games require transactions, those transactions can be pivotal, very important to you getting airdrop, simply because you're doing the main things these developers want to see is you doing transactions on the network, whether that be creating volume through doing token exchanges, or just you doing transactions for minting NFT, stuff like that. So games are an incredibly easy way to break the monotony of you having transactions on the network.
Hey, Naruto, I was going to mention one thing. Have you touched on looking for projects that potentially are DAOs? Because like how we were talking about earlier on Arbitrum, some of the projects that are DAOs actually, so they got their token allocation of Arbitrum, and then holders received a portion of that token allocation too. So I'm guessing there'll probably be a similar opportunity for zkSync.
Yes. We're going back to zkSync. Maybe this can probably apply to other protocols as well. zkSync specifically has said that they want to allocate over 60% of the tokens to the community. So for Arbitrum gave a lot of tokens out to DAOs to do with what they saw fit with. And the idea being, if you find a project and it has a DAO component, then there's a decent chance when there's token drop, the protocol will give these DAOs tokens, and hopefully these DAOs either spend those tokens to make a better product, or these DAOs give some of those tokens back to community members that made it what it is. So that's another thing to look out for as well. Check if they're a DAO. Check see their structure to make sure it's not just some one guy across 3 different accounts, if possible. But that can be a great way to position yourself for airdrop as well. The regular token airdrop for the protocol, and getting more tokens from these projects. I also wanted to talk about sorry, my dog's in the background. There you go. I also wanted to talk about this new wallet that I found on Starknet for people that are interested. For those who have heard me talk about Starknet before, it sucks. It's really slow. I do think it will get better over time. There's a new wallet that I found that can be very great for farming Starknet if you're interested in that. It has a cool feature where it gives you a Starknet Pro score, meaning it will give you a score on how well you are doing, how many dApps you're using on the network. I'm gonna drop it in the voice. I'm gonna drop it in the office hours chat.
I just did an office hours chat.
Yes, but I think it's a really great thing if you are into farming and you're into farming Starknets. It's better than Argent. It's a little bit easier to use, and the score I think will help you kind of determine how well am I using Starknet, how well am I farming it, how well am I using it, and this wallet may potentially have airdrop in the future as well. So you're double dipping there.
Do you think that they made that with the intention of tracking farming?
Probably so. Educated guess, yes.
Yeah, it just seems a little too on brand for it not to, right?
But aside from that, does anyone else have any questions? I think we hit on the main things. Main things being, if you to avoid detection, make sure you are funding wallets from different exchanges. For most of these different layer 2s, make sure you're interacting once, twice a month. If it's in testnet, maybe just once a month, because I'm not entirely sure how far the testnet will get you with, like, as far as token allocations. Squeeze coming out the next 2 weeks, and I will be diving into that through TweetDeck for myself to find new projects that are launching that may have a token that I can buy, and pretty much all. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I think we covered a lot of amazing topics. Everything from, how long are these cooks going to take? We have some of the earlier ones like ConsenSys that are very early, and some of the ones that are now shifting onto a different phase like SWI, and those that are in between like Starknet, they might have a year out, Layer 0, zkSync, and others. We made sure to drop all websites and links that we were referring to in the office hours chat for anyone that is interested. Obviously, Naruto is always available in chat, me as well. So if you guys have any questions, just feel free to drop into our focus discussion for zkSync. I know that most people are talking airdrop strategies and more in there. Just want to say a big thank you to Naruto. You absolute beast, crushing it today. Shout out to Scottco, dropping these wonderful data points on TVLs and websites as well. And thank you all for tuning in today into our Layer 2 conversation. Stay tuned for more, and looking forward to seeing y'all tomorrow in Numbers Therapy.
Actually, one last thing. Make sure to be on the lookout for the zkSync project that Scott Coe and Seth and a few other people at MVHQ and I are working on. I think you'll like it when we announce what it is officially. One last piece of alpha.
Yeah, I hope you leave with that FOMO. Again, thank you, Naruto. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Catch you guys in VC1.